A poor rancher showed one act of kindness, and 1,000 Apaches appeared at his ranch. By dawn, Tomas Green lived on the edge of the desert in Arizona. His ranch was small, and life had never been easy for him. The sun rose early and set late, and every day brought a new challenge. The land was dry and harsh. The wind carried dust across the fields, and the cattle often wandered far in search of grass. Tomas worked from morning to night, fixing fences, feeding the animals, and trying to keep his little ranch running. He was poor, but he was proud of what he had. Every corner of the ranch showed the care he had put into it. There was no wealth here, but there was honesty, hard work, and a love for the land he called home. Tomas had no family left. His parents had passed when he was young, and he had no siblings. The town nearby knew him as a quiet man who kept to himself. He did not drink or gamble, and he never caused trouble. He was simple, but his life had its share of sadness. Some days, loneliness pressed on him like the heat of the desert sun. Yet, Tomas never let despair control him. He believed in doing right, even when no one was watching. He often helped neighbors fix fences or shared what little he had with those in need. For him, kindness was not a choice. It was a way of living. One afternoon, while Tomas was repairing a broken fence near the edge of his property, he noticed something moving in the distance. At first, he thought it was an animal. Then he saw the shape of a boy stumbling through the dry grass. The boy was thin, with torn clothes and bare feet. His skin was sunburned, and his face was pale and streaked with dirt. He looked weak, as if he could fall at any moment. Tomas's heart beat faster. He knew immediately that the boy needed help. Without hesitation, Tomas put down his tools and ran toward the boy. "Hey, are you all right?" he called. The boy did not answer. No, he was too exhausted to speak. Tomas reached him and gently lifted him to his feet. The boy almost collapsed in his arms, but Tomas held him steady. He led the boy back to the ranch where he could rest and drink water. The boy's lips were dry and his breathing was shallow. Tomas fetched a bucket of clean water and helped him drink. Then he prepared a simple meal of bread and dried meat. The boy ate slowly, looking around with wide eyes. He did not speak, but Tomas could see relief in his expression. After the boy had eaten, Tomas carefully tended to his wounds. He cleaned the cuts on the boy's arms and legs and bandaged them with clean cloth. He noticed a deep gash on the boy's leg that needed special attention. Tomas worked carefully, trying to ease the boy's pain with gentle hands. The boy flinched at first, but eventually stayed still, trusting the man who had saved him. For hours, Tomas watched over him, making sure he did not need anything else. The ranch was quiet, except for the soft sounds of the wind and the distant calls of birds. Tomas felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had saved lives before, cattle, horses, even neighbors, but never a child so alone and in need. The boy finally fell asleep, curled up near the fire. Tomas sat nearby, thinking about what had brought him here. He wondered where the boy came from and why he was alone in the desert. He could see the fear and exhaustion in the boy's face, but he also saw a spark of courage. Despite everything, the boy had survived long enough to reach his ranch. Tomas smiled quietly. He had done what he could. It was the right thing to do. He believed that even small acts of kindness mattered, even when the world seemed harsh and unfair. The night passed slowly. Tomas stayed awake for most of it, keeping an eye on the boy. He thought about his own life, about the loneliness that had followed him for years. He realized that in helping this boy, he felt a connection he had not known in a long time. Life on the ranch had been hard and quiet, but this moment, this act of caring, made him feel alive in a way he had forgotten. The desert seemed less empty. the stars above brighter and the wind less harsh. When the boy awoke the next morning, he looked around and saw that he was safe. He looked at Tomas with wide eyes, his lips forming words he could barely say. "Thank you," he whispered. Tomas nodded, smiling. "You're safe now," he said. "That's all that matters." The boy did not speak much after that, but he followed Tomas around the ranch, helping in small ways. He carried water, fetched tools, and fed the animals. Tomas watched him and realized that the boy had more courage than he looked. Despite being weak and injured, he faced the desert, the sun, and the dangers of life with a quiet determination. Over the next few days, Tomas and the boy formed a simple routine. They worked together, shared meals, and learned from each other. Tomas taught the boy how to care for the animals and fix fences. The boy, in return, shared small lessons about moving quietly, watching the land, and understanding the desert in ways Tomas had never thought of. Though they did not speak the same language perfectly, they understood each other in ways that went beyond words. Tomas felt grateful for the boy's presence. It had been a long time since he felt the joy of companionship, and the boy brought life back to the quiet ranch. One afternoon, as Tomas and the boy rested by the edge of the ranch, they heard distant voices. Tomas's heart tightened. He wondered if other travelers or bandits were nearby. The boy looked up, eyes sharp, listening intently. Then he pointed to the horizon. A small group of figures appeared, moving slowly across the desert. Tomas felt a mix of fear and curiosity. He did not know who they were or what they wanted, but he knew that the boy had survived by trusting him, and he would continue to protect him no matter what. As the sun set behind the distant hills, Tomas thought about the life he had lived. He had known struggle, loneliness, and poverty, but he had also known honesty, hard work, and small joys. Now, with a boy at his side, he realized that kindness could bring unexpected changes. He had saved a life without expecting anything in return. That was enough. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not turn away from someone in need, even in a harsh world. Even when life was difficult, compassion mattered. The night grew quiet again. Tomas and the boy sat near the fire, listening to the sounds of the desert. The stars twinkled above, and the wind whispered across the land. Tomas looked at the boy, asleep and peaceful, and felt hope he had not felt in years. He knew that their lives had changed with a single act of kindness. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he felt ready to face it, together with the boy. The desert was still wide and challenging, but now it was also filled with the possibility of new beginnings. And so Tomas Green, the poor rancher, returned to his simple work each day with a renewed heart. He mended fences, fed the animals, and cared for the boy as if he were his own family. Life on the ranch continued as harsh and demanding as ever, but now it was richer in ways that mattered most. A small act of kindness had brought light into the quiet, dusty corners of his life. It was a reminder that even in the hardest times, even in the loneliest places, a single choice to do good could change everything. The boy's presence was a quiet blessing, a living proof of the power of compassion. Tomas never sought recognition or reward. He simply knew that doing the right thing, even when it seemed small or unnoticed, was its own reward. The ranch was still modest, the work still difficult, but the bond between the rancher and the boy made the desert feel less empty, the days less harsh, and the nights less lonely. And though he did not yet know it, this small act of kindness would soon ripple far beyond the ranch, touching lives in ways he could never imagine. After the boy had recovered and returned to some strength, life on Tomas Green's ranch settled into a quiet rhythm. Tomas thought about the boy often. He wondered about his family and where he had come from. He did not ask too many questions, knowing that sometimes words could complicate what was already simple. The boy needed help, and Tomas had given it. But news travels in ways one cannot always see. In the days that followed, word of Tomas's kindness began to spread beyond the edges of the desert. Among the Apache communities, the story of the rancher who had helped the boy became known quickly. It started with whispers from travelers, from scouts who passed through the lands, and from the boy himself, who told his family and his friends about the man who had cared for him. For the Apache, acts of honor and kindness were not forgotten. A gesture of compassion carried great weight. It was said among them that helping one of their own, without asking for reward, was a mark of a person's true character. In the camps and villages, elders spoke of the rancher with curiosity and respect. Some were skeptical at first. Why would a settler help one of ours, they asked. We know them to be harsh, to take what they want. But others remembered the stories of men who had shown kindness in times of need. Perhaps this man is different, they said. Perhaps his heart is true. And so, discussions began among the leaders. They decided to send small groups to observe the rancher and learn more. Meanwhile, Tomas went about his work as usual. He repaired fences, fed the cattle, and cared for the boy as if he were family. He did not know that eyes were watching from the hills, that scouts had begun moving closer, curious and cautious. The desert, which had once seemed so empty, was now full of quiet attention. Tomas noticed subtle signs, footprints near the edge of his property, strange rustling in the brush, shadows that moved just beyond sight. At first he thought it might be wild animals, but deep in his heart, he felt something more. One evening, as the sun sank low over the distant hills, a small group of Apache warriors approached the ranch. They moved silently, their steps careful and deliberate. Tomas spotted them and immediately felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. He did not know their intentions. Were they angry? Were they here to cause trouble? Yet he remembered the lessons of his own life. Courage did not mean the absence of fear. Courage meant acting with honesty and respect, even when the unknown loomed. He stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome," he said quietly. "I mean you no harm." The warrior stopped a few feet away, their eyes studying him carefully. One of them, older than the others, stepped forward. He did not speak in words Tomas fully understood, but his gestures were clear. He pointed to the boy, then to Tomas, then raised a hand in a sign of respect. Slowly, Tomas realized that they had come because of the boy he had helped. They were not there to fight. They were there to honor what he had done. Over the next days, small groups of Apache families arrived at the ranch. First, it was a few warriors with their children. Then more families followed. They brought food, water, and supplies, offering gifts of respect. Tomas was overwhelmed. He had lived a hard life, struggling each day to survive, and now these people, who had once been strangers, came to him in gratitude. He did not fully understand why this had happened, but he welcomed them as best he could. He offered shelter, shared meals, and showed the same kindness he had shown the boy. The Apache taught him much about life in the desert. They showed him how to find water where none seemed to exist, how to move quietly through the hills, and how to read the signs of the wind and the sky. They shared stories of their ancestors, of battles fought long ago, and of the spirits they believed guided them. Tomas listened carefully, absorbing every lesson. In turn, he shared what he knew about ranching, tending to cattle, and caring for the land. Though their worlds were very different, they found ways to work together, learning from one another with respect and patience. Neighbors and townspeople began to notice the changes at Tomas's ranch. Some were frightened, They whispered about the Apaches gathering near the ranch, warning that trouble might come. Others were curious, wondering what could bring these people to a poor man's property. But Tomas paid them little mind. He knew that fear often came from misunderstanding. The Apaches had come not to harm, but to honor a simple act of kindness. Tensions were quiet but present. Tomas knew that living near the desert's edge meant always being prepared. Bandits, rival settlers, and wild animals were a constant threat. But with the Apache families nearby, he felt safer than he had in years. Their presence brought protection, but more importantly, it brought friendship and trust. Tomas began to understand that acts of compassion could ripple far beyond one small moment. Helping the boy had started a chain of events he could never have imagined. As the days passed, the ranch became a place of learning and cooperation. Children played together, learning both the ways of the ranch and the lessons of the Apache. Adults shared skills, mending fences, hunting, gathering water, and tending to animals. Even the harsh desert seemed kinder somehow, softened by the shared work and respect between the people who lived there. Tomas felt a deep sense of gratitude he could not fully express. His life had been lonely and hard, but now it was filled with a community that valued honesty, courage, and respect. One morning, Tomas woke before dawn. He stepped outside, looking across the ranch, and felt a strange mixture of awe and disbelief. In the faint light of early morning, he could see movement in the distance. The boy, now stronger, stood near the edge of the property, watching silently. And behind him, small groups of Apache families were appearing over the hills. Tomas counted them in disbelief. 50, then 100, then more. It seemed as though the desert itself had come alive with people. The sun rose slowly, and still they came. By the time the first light of day touched the ranch, nearly 1,000 Apaches were gathered on the property. Tomas felt his heart race. He had helped one child, not knowing what would follow, and now an entire community had come. They were not there to demand anything, not there to fight or steal. They were there to honor him, to repay the kindness he had shown, and to form a bond of trust and friendship. For Tomas, it was a moment of wonder and disbelief. He realized that kindness, even from someone who had little to give, could reach far beyond what the eye could see. One small act had sparked something much greater than he had imagined. The leader of the group, the older warrior who had first stepped forward, approached Tomas. He spoke slowly, pointing to the boy, then to Tomas, then to the people gathered around. The gestures were simple, but the meaning was clear: respect, gratitude, and trust. Tomas nodded, feeling words were not enough to express what he felt. He offered food, water, and shelter to all who needed it, and the Apaches accepted graciously. For the first time in his life, Tomas felt the true power of community and the strength that comes from shared respect and cooperation. Throughout the day, families moved around the ranch, helping where they could. Children fed animals, adults repaired fences and built small shelters. Tomas watched, amazed at how smoothly everything worked. He realized that the Apaches were not just guests, they were partners, sharing their skills and knowledge freely. Life on the ranch, once lonely and difficult, now seemed full of energy, laughter, and purpose. Tomas understood that the desert, harsh as it was, could become a place of hope when people acted with honesty and kindness. As the sun set, Tomas stood quietly near the edge of the ranch, looking across the land. The Apache families sat around small fires, sharing stories and laughter. The boy, now healthy and strong, ran freely among them. Tomas's heart was full. He had never imagined that one act of helping a child could bring so much into his life. He had always believed that doing right was its own reward, but now he saw that kindness could create bonds stronger than fear. richer than wealth, and more lasting than any material possession. Tomas understood that this was only the beginning. He did not know what challenges might come in the future, but he felt ready to face them with the support of the community that had gathered around him. The desert, once a place of isolation and struggle, had become a land of friendship, respect, and shared purpose, and it had all started with a single choice: to help a boy in need without expecting anything in return. And so the rancher who had little and the boy who had nearly lost everything now stood at the center of something greater than themselves. A community had formed around them, a living proof that one act of kindness could ripple across lives and change everything in ways no one could predict. The desert, once wide and lonely, was now alive with the voices, laughter, and shared work of a people united by respect, gratitude, and the simple truth that kindness always finds its way back. The next morning, Tomas woke before sunrise. The desert air was crisp and quiet, but the ranch was alive with movement. The Apache families who had arrived the day before were already awake, tending to their small tasks. Children ran across the fields, laughing and playing, while adults moved with purpose, carrying water, repairing fences, and checking the animals. Tomas stood at the edge of his porch, watching in awe. He had never seen so many people working together in harmony, and the sight filled him with a strange mix of pride and humility. He walked slowly toward the largest group of Apache elders who had gathered near the main gate. The older warrior, the leader who had first approached him, greeted Tomas with a nod. They did not speak the same language perfectly, but the leader's eyes were kind and his gestures were clear. He pointed to the boy, then to Tomas, then to the work being done around the ranch. It was a silent message. Your kindness has brought us here, and now we will help you as one. Tomas smiled. Words were not needed. Respect and understanding were stronger than language. The day passed in a rhythm that was both new and familiar. Tomas guided the Apache on how to tend to the cattle, showing them how to move the herd safely and check for illness or injury. In return, the Apaches taught him techniques he had never known: how to read the signs of the land, how to spot water beneath the dry soil, and how to move silently through the hills so that animals were not disturbed. He listened carefully, realizing that these lessons could protect his ranch in ways he had never imagined. The desert could be harsh and unforgiving, but now he had allies who understood it deeply. Children played and learned at the same time. Tomas watched as they helped feed the animals, carrying buckets of water and scattering hay for the horses. They worked together naturally, as if they had always belonged on the ranch. The boy who had first appeared at Tomas's gate ran freely, teaching the younger children small tricks he had learned. Laughing as they stumbled and fell in the dust, Tomas felt warmth in his chest. Life on the ranch had been lonely for so long, but now it was filled with energy, learning, and joy. By midday, a few neighbors from the nearby town had ventured to the edge of the property to see what was happening. They watched from a distance, whispering to one another. Some looked worried. "So many Apaches. What if trouble comes?" they said. Others were curious. Why would they all come to a poor man's ranch? The whispers reached Tomas's ears, but he ignored them. He knew that fear often came from misunderstanding. The Apaches had not come to cause harm. They had come because a single act of kindness had touched their hearts. He smiled quietly, knowing that actions speak louder than rumors. As the afternoon sun rose high in the sky, Tomas noticed a small group of strangers approaching from the hills. His heart tightened. In the desert, visitors could mean danger, bandits, rival settlers, or wild animals. But as they drew closer, he saw the faces were familiar. These were Apache families from neighboring lands, responding to the stories they had heard. Their arrival was calm and deliberate. No one moved recklessly. They came with respect, bringing small gifts of food, water, and tools. Tomas felt overwhelmed. One act of kindness had grown into something far beyond what he could have imagined. The Apaches quickly integrated into the life of the ranch. They built small shelters near the edges of the property, careful not to disturb the cattle or crops. They shared knowledge and skills, showing Tomas how to make simple repairs and improvements that could last through harsh weather. Tomas helped wherever he could, learning from their techniques and sharing what he knew about ranch life. Together they repaired fences that had been broken for months, secured water sources, and even improved the layout of the ranch to make it safer for animals and people alike. By late afternoon, a group of children returned from the hills with small bundles of herbs and plants. The elders explained to Tomas that these were healing plants, useful for both humans and animals. He was amazed at their knowledge. He had lived on the land for years, but he realized he had only understood a fraction of what it could offer. The Apaches taught him how to use the plants for medicine, how to store them, and how to prepare simple remedies for cuts, fevers, and injuries. Tomas felt grateful. He had gained not only help for his ranch, but also knowledge that could keep him and the boys safe for many years to come. Evening came and the desert glowed with the colors of sunset. Fires were lit around the ranch and the sound of laughter, conversation, and song filled the air. Tomas watched from his porch, feeling a sense of peace he had not known in years. The boy sat nearby, telling a story to a group of children, and Tomas could see the pride and joy in his eyes. The Apache families had not only brought help and protection, but had brought life and hope to the ranch. He realized that this was more than he had ever dreamed of. That night, as the stars appeared one by one in the sky, Tomas reflected on the events of the past days. He had helped one child in need, expecting nothing in return. And now, an entire community had come to his ranch. They had brought skills, knowledge, friendship, and protection. They had taught him the value of trust, loyalty, and respect. Tomas understood that life was full of unexpected gifts. Sometimes the smallest actions could ripple outward in ways that no one could predict. One act of kindness had created a bond that was stronger than fear, stronger than prejudice, and stronger than loneliness. The next morning, Tomas woke to a sound he had never heard before. Hundreds of footsteps moving across the ranch. He looked out and saw the Apache families working together in perfect coordination. Some tended to animals, some repaired fences, and others moved supplies to improve the land. Even the children had important jobs, carrying water, feeding the animals, and assisting wherever they could. Tomas felt pride in their work and gratitude for their trust. He realized that he was no longer alone. He had a family, a community, and a purpose greater than himself. During that day, a few challenges arose. Some animals had escaped the pens, and a small group of bandits attempted to approach from the north. But the Apaches acted quickly, guiding Tomas and the boy to a safe position while others confronted the bandits with calm but firm authority. The intruders, seeing the unity and courage of the people on the ranch, quickly retreated. Tomas was amazed. He had never faced danger like this before, but with the Apache by his side, he felt safe. He realized that trust, respect, and cooperation could protect more than weapons or money ever could. The boy, who had once been weak and injured, now ran across the fields with energy and confidence. He laughed and played with the children, taught them small skills he had learned, and helped the adults wherever he could. Tomas watched him and felt a deep sense of pride. This child, whom he had saved, had become a symbol of hope and strength. Together they had brought people together, created a community, and built a ranch that was stronger, safer, and more alive than ever before. By evening, the sun dipped behind the distant hills, casting long shadows across the land. Tomas sat near the fire, watching the family settle for the night. He realized that the desert, once harsh and empty, had become a place of life, learning, and connection. He had lived a life of struggle and solitude, but now, surrounded by friends and allies, he felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment. One small act of kindness had brought this transformation. One act had changed everything. That night, as the wind whispered through the desert, Tomas lay awake, thinking about the future. He did not know what challenges lay ahead, but he knew he would face them with the support of the Apache families who had come to his ranch. He understood that kindness, honesty, and respect were powerful forces that could create bonds stronger than fear, stronger than distance, and stronger than time. The desert, once wide and lonely, was now full of life and promise. The next morning, Tomas walked through the ranch, looking at the work that had been done. Fences were stronger, water sources secured, and animals safe. The Apache families worked alongside him, moving with purpose, sharing knowledge and teaching the boy new lessons each day. Tomas smiled quietly, realizing that his life had been transformed. He had given help to one child, and in return he had received a community, friendship, protection, and hope. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had revealed its hidden strength through the people who had come to the ranch. Tomas understood that one act of kindness, done without expectation, could ripple outward in ways beyond imagination. He knew that the ranch, once lonely and difficult, would now thrive, and he knew that he would never forget the lesson he had learned, that helping another, even in the smallest way, could change not only a life, but the world around it. The days at Tomas Green's ranch passed with work, learning, and laughter, but life in the desert is never without challenges. One morning, as the sun rose red over the hills, Tomas noticed something unusual. A thin trail of smoke curled in the distance, far beyond the hills where the ranch ended. His heart tightened. He had learned to read the desert carefully, and smoke in that direction could only mean trouble. Bandits or other travelers might be approaching. He walked quickly toward the edge of the property, scanning the horizon. The boy ran to his side, wide-eyed and tense. Tomas called to the Apache leaders, pointing toward the smoke. They quickly gathered together, their faces serious. Though they did not fully speak the same language, their gestures were clear. The smoke was a sign of potential danger, and they would need to act. The families began to prepare, moving quietly but efficiently. Some collected supplies, others gathered weapons for protection, and the children were guided to safe areas away from the open fields. Tomas felt a sense of calm in the midst of the fear. He realized that the presence of the Apache families and the skills they had taught him had made him stronger than he had ever been. As the smoke grew closer, Tomas saw a small group of riders emerging from the distant hills. Bandits. They rode fast and recklessly, their intentions clear. They had heard stories of the ranch protected by Apaches and had come to test it, perhaps to steal cattle or attack the settlers. Tomas's heart raced, but he did not panic. He looked at the Apache leaders and nodded. Together, they had learned how to work as a unit, and now it would be tested. The Apache families moved with speed and precision. Warriors and adults positioned themselves near the fences, while others hid along the edges of the hills to observe and track the bandits' movements. Tomas and the boy took positions near the center of the ranch, where they could protect the animals and help coordinate the defense. The children were kept safely behind walls and fences, watching silently but learning courage from the older members. Tomas realized that fear could teach lessons just as much as joy could, if faced with the right guidance. The bandits rode closer, laughing and shouting, believing they would intimidate a poor rancher and a few native families. But as they approached, they noticed the organized movement of the Apaches. Men and women appeared in positions that gave the impression of strength, coordination, and readiness. Some warriors stood on the fences, others on the hillsides, while children and adults moved quietly but efficiently, carrying supplies and securing animals. The bandits slowed, unsure of what they were seeing. It was clear that this ranch was not ordinary, and the rumors of protection and community were true. Tomas called to the leaders, and together they formed a plan. The bandits were few in number, but their horses were fast, and they could strike quickly. The Apache warriors decided to use the terrain to their advantage, hiding among the hills and working in small teams to guide the bandits away from the cattle and the main ranch. Tomas helped, using the knowledge he had gained from the Apache to move quietly and anticipate the bandits' actions. The boy followed closely, learning courage and strategy from both Tomas and the Apache elders. As the bandits reached the edge of the property, the Apache warriors appeared in front of them, blocking their path. Some carried bows and arrows, while others had long wooden staffs, used with skill and precision. The bandits hesitated. They had expected an easy target, but now they faced a group that was prepared, calm, and united. Instead, they moved with confidence, showing the strength of their presence. Their gestures were clear: leave now or face the consequences. Tomas watched as the bandits exchanged nervous glances. They realized that they had underestimated the ranch and the people protecting it. The Apaches' courage and organization had created an invisible strength, one that did not need to fight to be effective. Slowly, the bandits began to retreat, their horses galloping back toward the hills from which they had come. Tomas exhaled in relief. No one had been hurt, and the ranch remained safe. He turned to the Apache leaders, nodding in gratitude and respect. The boy looked up at him, eyes wide with admiration. Together they had faced danger and survived. After the bandits left, life on the ranch returned to a careful rhythm. There was work to be done, repairs to be made, and lessons to be learned. The Apache families moved quickly to check fences, tend to the animals, and ensure that the property was secure. Tomas worked alongside them, repairing a broken gate and reinforcing pens where the cattle had been nervous during the bandits' approach. He realized that threats would always come, but with knowledge, preparation, and cooperation, they could face them without fear. The days following the attack brought a new sense of confidence to the ranch. The Apache families shared more of their skills, teaching Tomas how to anticipate danger, read the signs of the desert, and work with the land rather than against it. They explained how to notice subtle signs, the direction of footprints in sand, the movement of birds, or the way plants bend in the wind. Tomas listened carefully, grateful for the lessons and eager to apply them. Every day brought new understanding, new respect, and new trust. The boy became braver as well. He practiced moving quietly with the warriors, learning to watch and listen, and to understand when to act and when to wait. He carried water to workers, helped repair fences, and learned about courage through experience. Tomas watched him grow from a weak, injured child into a strong, capable helper. The bond between them deepened. They had started as two individuals, but now they were part of something larger, a community that shared work, protection, and respect. One afternoon, a storm rolled in from the west. The wind picked up, dust swirling across the fields. Tomas and the Apache families moved quickly to secure the animals and protect the property. They worked together, pulling down loose materials, reinforcing shelters, and guiding the children to safe areas. The storm tested their strength and coordination, but they handled it with calm efficiency. Tomas realized that the lessons he had learned from the Apache about the land, the animals, and working together were more valuable than any tools or weapons he had ever owned. By nightfall, the storm passed, leaving a calm desert and a ranch that had survived unscathed. Fires were lit, and the families gathered to share food and stories. Tomas sat quietly, reflecting on the events of the past week. He thought about the bandits, the storm, and the challenges of life on the edge of the desert. But he also thought about the courage, wisdom, and kindness he had witnessed from the Apache families. They had shown him that strength came not only from weapons or money, but from unity, respect, and the willingness to help others. The boy sat next to Tomas, holding a small bundle of herbs the Apache had taught him to gather during the storm. He looked up at Tomas and smiled, proud of what they had accomplished together. Tomas reached out, ruffling his hair gently. "You've learned well," he said. "And so have I." He realized that this boy, once weak and alone, had become a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of kindness. Together they had faced danger, survived challenges, and grown stronger. The nights became a time of reflection and learning. Tomas would sit near the fire listening to stories of the Apache, their history, and their ways. He shared what he knew of ranching, the land, and survival. Each story, each lesson created a deeper bond between them. He understood that the desert, once harsh and unforgiving, was now a place of life, learning, and connection. The small act of helping a boy had created a community, a family, and a sense of purpose stronger than he had ever known. As weeks passed, the ranch grew stronger and more secure. The fences were reinforced, water sources improved, and the animals thrived. Tomas worked hard, but now he was not alone. The Apache families were always nearby, sharing their skills, teaching the children, and protecting the ranch. Tomas felt gratitude and humility. He understood that true strength comes not from wealth, weapons, or solitude, but from cooperation, trust, and respect. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, Tomas walked to the edge of the ranch and looked out at the desert. The wind was calm, the air clear, and the animals safe. He thought about how far they had come since the boy first arrived, weak and injured. From one small act of kindness, a chain of events had unfolded that brought safety, community, and hope to the ranch. Tomas realized that this was the power of compassion. It could protect, teach, and transform lives in ways that could never be measured. The boy ran to him, carrying a basket of herbs and wild fruits he had gathered with the Apache children. Tomas smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew the challenges would continue to come, that the desert would remain harsh, and that danger could appear at any time. But he also knew that he was ready. With the Apache families, the boy, and the lessons he had learned, he could face whatever came next. They had built a ranch that was stronger, safer, and more alive than ever before, and it had all started with a single act of kindness. That night, as the stars appeared above the desert, Tomas lay awake, listening to the quiet sounds of life around the ranch. Fires flickered in small circles, laughter drifted on the wind, and the animals settled peacefully. He thought about the future, about the lessons he had learned, and about the people who had become his family. He realized that true wealth was not measured in gold or land, but in friendship, trust, and the courage to do what is right. The desert had tested him, but he had emerged stronger, not alone, but surrounded by a community bound by respect, kindness, and shared purpose. The desert morning was quiet, the sun just beginning to rise over the distant hills. Tomas Green stood at the edge of his ranch, looking over the land he had tended for years. The ranch was no longer the lonely, struggling place it had once been. Animals moved freely, the fences were strong, and small shelters dotted the property. built by the Apache families who had come to him months ago. Life had changed in ways he could never have imagined, all because of a single act of kindness. The boy, now stronger and full of energy, ran toward Tomas carrying a small bundle of herbs and fruits. "Look what I found," he said, pointing to the collection. Tomas smiled, ruffling his hair. He could see how much the boy had grown, not just in strength, but in courage and confidence. When the boy had first stumbled onto the ranch, weak and frightened, Tomas had no idea that his life would become intertwined with so many others. Now the boy was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of kindness to change everything. The Apache families had settled comfortably on the ranch, but they were not permanent. They lived close to the land, moving with the seasons and respecting the balance of nature. Yet their presence had created a lasting impact. Children ran and played freely, learning both the ways of the ranch and the wisdom of the Apache. Adults worked alongside Tomas, repairing fences, tending to animals, and sharing knowledge about the desert. The ranch had become a place of learning, cooperation, and protection. Tomas realized that his small, lonely life had blossomed into something greater than he had ever dreamed. Visitors occasionally arrived from neighboring towns, curious about the stories they had heard. Many were amazed to see the ranch protected not by soldiers or guns, but by trust, cooperation, and respect. Tomas often welcomed them with simple hospitality, sharing food and water and letting them learn from the Apache families. The ranch had become a symbol, proof that kindness and courage could build bridges across cultures. Tomas felt proud, not of himself, but of what his simple act of helping a boy had inspired. The boy continued to grow in skill and confidence. The Apache warriors taught him hunting techniques, how to read the desert signs, and how to care for animals. Tomas showed him the work of ranching, how to mend fences, and the patience required to nurture both land and livestock. Each day brought new lessons, and the boy absorbed them eagerly. Watching him, Tomas understood that this was more than teaching survival. It was shaping a future filled with strength, respect, and wisdom. One afternoon, as the sun burned high overhead, a traveler approached the ranch. He was cautious at first, but when he saw the harmony among the people, he slowed. He told stories of other ranches struggling alone, and of communities divided by fear and mistrust. Tomas listened quietly, realizing how fortunate he had become. His small act of kindness had grown into a community bound by trust and understanding, unlike anything the traveler had seen before. The ranch, once quiet and lonely, now stood as a testament to what could happen when people acted with courage and compassion. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The Apache families continued to move with the seasons, sometimes returning to their villages, sometimes staying longer on the ranch. Their presence strengthened the land, taught Tomas valuable lessons, and created bonds that would last a lifetime. Tomas often reflected on how different life had been before the boy arrived. The ranch had been isolated, the work endless, and the nights quiet except for the wind. Now, laughter, music, and voices filled the air. The land was alive in a way he had never experienced. Tomas also thought about the lessons he had learned. Kindness, he realized, could ripple far beyond what anyone could imagine. One small act, helping a boy in need, had brought safety, friendship, knowledge, and joy. It had created a community that could face danger together, learn from one another, and thrive in the harsh desert. Tomas understood that life was not measured by wealth, land, or possessions, but by the connections made and the good one could do for others. The boy, now nearly grown, often helped guide new travelers or neighboring children, teaching them the ways of the ranch and the desert. Tomas watched him with pride, knowing that this child, once weak and alone, had become a leader in his own way. The boy had learned courage, respect, and wisdom from both Tomas and the Apache families. He had become a living symbol of the power of kindness and the strength it could inspire in others. Evenings were filled with stories and songs. The Apache families shared tales of their ancestors, of battles fought and lessons learned, while Tomas shared stories of the ranch, of his parents, and the quiet life he had lived before the boy arrived. Together they celebrated their shared history and the new life they had built. The ranch had become more than a place to survive. It was a home, a school, and a community. Every firelight reflected the bonds that had formed and the lessons that would last for generations. The ranch continued to thrive. Cattle multiplied, crops grew stronger, and the land was cared for in ways that balanced work and nature. Tomas and the Apache families worked together seamlessly, creating a rhythm that made life easier and more joyful. He realized that this harmony was not accidental. It was built on respect, trust, and the understanding that helping others was never wasted. Every fence repaired, every animal cared for, and every child taught was a testament to the power of compassion. One morning, as the boy helped herd cattle into a new pasture, a messenger arrived from a nearby town. He brought news of other ranchers struggling with drought, storms, and thieves. The messenger had heard of Tomas's ranch, protected by the Apache families, and wanted advice on how to survive. Tomas thought for a moment and realized that he could share what he had learned. The lessons of cooperation, courage, and respect were not only for his ranch, they could help others. He sent instructions, shared knowledge, and encouraged other ranchers to work together with the Apache and their communities. Tomas often reflected on the path that had brought him here. He had started as a poor rancher, living in solitude, struggling to survive. Then, one day, a boy appeared at his gate, weak, hungry, and in need. Helping him had seemed small, almost insignificant at the time. Yet it had transformed everything. The ranch had become safe, the community strong, and his life full of purpose.
He realized that the true measure of life was not in what one owns, but in the good one does, and the bonds one builds along the way.
Seasons changed, and the desert showed its beauty and challenges. The Apaches moved with the rhythm of the land, sometimes traveling to their villages and returning later. Tomas never felt alone. The boy had grown into a capable young man, and the ranch was now a place where life and learning thrived together. Visitors marveled at the harmony, the strength, and the resilience of the people who lived there. They saw proof that one act of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what anyone could see. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in shades of red and gold, Tomas sat on his porch, looking at the land. The boy played nearby, the Apache families worked in quiet harmony, and the animals rested peacefully. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the struggles, the acts of courage, the storms, and the bandits who had tested their strength. Everything had led to this moment, a life full of meaning, connection, and hope. He smiled quietly, feeling gratitude for the journey and for the power of kindness. Tomas knew that life would continue to bring challenges, that the desert was never truly easy, and that danger could appear without warning. But he also knew that he was no longer alone. He had learned that courage, trust, and compassion could overcome fear, hardship, and loneliness. His small act of kindness had not only saved a boy, but had created a legacy, a ranch full of life, a community built on respect, and lessons that would continue to spread far beyond the desert. The boy, now strong and confident, often helped guide visitors, shared stories of the desert, and taught the next generation of children about courage and kindness. Tomas watched him with pride. The boy had grown into more than a survivor. He had become a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. The ranch had transformed from a lonely, struggling property into a thriving community, alive with purpose, respect, and life. As night fell, fires burned across the ranch, casting a warm glow on the desert land. Tomas sat quietly, listening to the laughter, songs, and conversations around him. He realized that his life had been forever changed by a single choice: to help a boy in need. That choice had brought friends, community, safety, and hope. It had created a place where life thrived, and where kindness was remembered, honored, and returned. And so, Tomas Green, once a poor, lonely rancher, now stood at the center of a thriving community, protected and enriched by the Apache families who had arrived in response to his simple act of compassion. The desert, once harsh and unforgiving, had become a land of life, learning, and legacy. His one choice to show kindness had created bonds stronger than fear, richer than gold, and more lasting than he could ever have imagined. The ranch, the boy, and the Apache families would carry the story forward for generations, a testament to the power of compassion and the truth that one small act can change everything.